This reading is from Plain Kate by Erin Bow. I believe it's going to be called Wood Angel or something along those lines in the UK. I don't know about the rest of the world. A little background first before I read it to you. Kate's mother died when she was born, and her father died a few years before this takes place from a fever. So she's an orphan. She lives in the stall where her father would sell his wood carvings, so not a great life. She too is a carver, and she's very, very talented, and she carves little charms that I believe are pronounced abjarka. Could be completely wrong. And because of her skill and because of the fact that she's alone and she's so good with her carving, people are starting to think that she might be a witch. It's a very superstitious community, and she's starting to fear for her life. So a tinker comes along and claims to be a witch and says he will give her the goods to get out of town, as well as grant her heart's deepest wish if she trades him her shadow. So that's where we are. Deep in the night, Plain Kate went down to the river. She carried her haversack on one hip and Taggle, her cat, in her arms. No cat would follow a wanderer, she realized that now. But she was not ready to give him up, to leave him as she had left the carved deer from her father's stall, propped up against her workbench in the abandoned square. Not yet, not quite yet. And maybe he would follow her, a little way. Away from the cressets of the market, under the lid of the clouds, it was very dark and very quiet. She heard the throaty murmur of the river, the plop of a jumping fish. Behind her, someone pulled a shutter. Across the river, a fox barked. Linné was sitting quietly, watching the black gleam of the river, dangling his legs off the dock like a child. A pierce-work tin lantern sat on the dock beside him, and in its feeble light he looked pale as a moth in the deep of the night. He was eating a meat pie. As Plain Kate came up, he held a second pie out to her. She ignored it. He shrugged, licked the gravy from his dagger, and set the pie on the wet wood at her feet. Taggle's nose started twitching. Plain Kate stood over Linné. Taggle had begun twisting in her hands like a strong fish, a fish who wanted meat pie. She would have to put him down soon. Now what? She asked. Blood, Linné said. Kate drew back, and he laughed. Mine, little knife, don't worry. Kind, she said, trying to mock, though her voice felt high and tight. Linné's dagger looked as if it could gut a deer. Blood draws things, and it would be foolish to draw your own shadow to you. He hesitated a bare second, then picked up his dagger, flipped it round, and drew it fearlessly across his wrist. His white face didn't flicker, but Plain Kate winced for him as blood welled. Taggle gave a strangled cough, as if she were squeezing him too hard. Linné leaned over and opened the lantern's door. He let the blood dribble onto the flame. Plain Kate braced herself for darkness, but instead of dousing the flame, the blood caught fire, burning like oil, brightening the night. What? She started to ask. Fire to set loose the spell, he said absently, watching his blood catch. You'd be surprised at the things a witch can make burn. His absentness, and the way the blood ran with flame, made the night suddenly eerie. Taggle hissed, and Kate backed away. Where are you going? Said Linné. Plain Kate began to babble something, but Linné had risen to his feet silently as a wave. His hand flashed, his wrist flicked. Blood flew and fell over Kate like a net. She leapt back shouting, and Taggle spilled from her arms and howled like a dying thing. Then the air turned to glass. Stay, said Linné, soft, coaxing into the sudden silence. Kate couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Taggle lay belly flat as if his back was broken. Linné looked at her with his head tilted, smiling softly as a father smiles at a sleeping child. Plain Kate thought she was dying, and that when she died she would remain as a statue, held in place by the stiffness of the air. Linné reached out a hand for her. She was sure she would die when he touched her, but she could only watch his hand coming. And he touched her. The air was air again. Kate staggered and crashed to the dock. The world spun and sparks shot through her vision. Linné loomed over her, dim and white as a pillar. Well, said the witch, that's that. What? Kate gasped. She coughed, blinked. Taggle shook his head hard. I have left your goods at the third big stone around the bend of the road. But Kate couldn't stop him, couldn't even see him. He was a sort of white shadow above her. She lay panting on the wet wood, her hair hanging over the dock edge, down toward the river. He looked down at her, his face fuzzy, though she thought he looked genuinely sad. The loss of a shadow is a slow thing, he said. You will have a little time before someone notices. Find a place to belong before that happens. Then he sang, Go fast, plain Kate, and travel light. Learn to walk the shadowy night. Without a shadow, flee from light. Become a shadow, truly. Plain Kate, Aaron Bell.